I'm going to call to order the Thursday, March 24th, 2016 Board of Directors for the RSCVA meeting. At this time, I would ask that we have the Pledge of Allegiance, and if Mr. McDonald would lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, Madam Secretary, can I get the roll call, please?
Mr. Carasali.
Here.
Mr. Farahi.
Here.
Mr. Lawson.
Here.
Mr. Lucey.
Here.
Mr. Mavrides.
Here.
Mr. McGovern. Off the board. Ms. Schieve. Here. Mr. Winters.
Here.
Mr. Wood.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. And Mr. Wood notified me this morning that he had something come up that was unavoidable, that he will not be able to make the meeting today at all. All right. First order of business. Can I get approval of the agenda? Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. Public comment. Do we have any public comment signed in at this time? Seeing none, we will close public comment, bring it back to the board. Can I get an approval of the agenda? We have a motion. Do I have a second? A motion and a second. A motion by Mrs. Schieve, second by Mr. Winters. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Approval of minutes from the February 25th, 2016 Board of Directors meeting. Looking for a motion?
No move.
I have a motion. I have a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Our motion carries unanimously. On to our first order of business, and I'm going to turn this over to our attorney.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Board members, in your meeting materials, you have a letter from Danny De La Rosa on behalf of the Chamber nominating Michael Hicks to complete Mr. McGovern's term on the RSCVA board. If approved, Mr. Hicks's appointment would be effective immediately and would continue through the balance of Mr. McGovern's term. This item is open for discussion by all members of the board, but only voted on by public officials.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. At this time, I want to have a brief discussion in regards to this item. The board, during last legislation, when we reduced the size of this board from 13 members to 9, we made sure the reason for that is so that we become a more effective board, a more efficient board. And the letter that we received from the Chamber and Mr. De La Rosa was on February 23rd. We received that letter prior to even Mr. McGovern stepping down from the board on the 24th. And so what I'd like to do is I'd like to hold off on this appointment of Mr. Hicks, not for any other reason other than I would like for all the electeds to have time to vet these candidates. I feel it's very important for the electeds to vet these candidates. These seats represent, this is not just a board for the public. This is very much a governmental agency that's in control of a lot of tax revenue that is controlled by the citizens. And I believe that every board member needs to be vetted at this point as we move forward. So what I would ask, and Mr. Hicks, I apologize for your attendance this morning, but it's not that Mr. Hicks's ability is in question. I would just like to have more opportunity to speak with Mr. Hicks and then potentially other candidates that the chamber may have. The one thing that I do notice from on our chamber is that we lack diversity. We are a bunch of white males, and we have one female on the board, and so I think that it's important that we show some diversity here. It's important that we show our constituents and our public that we're looking for a growth in our area and a multitude of different views. So with that being said, I'm going to open it up for discussion to the board.
Mr. Chair? Thank you very much. I actually think that's probably a good idea to maybe have the chamber come back with maybe 3 to 5 candidates that we could maybe sit down with or have a, separate board to. I think the point is very valid, being that we have given up seats from our bodies to make sure that moving forward that we are selecting and making sure that we're sort of getting all the opportunities that we can. And certainly there's a lot of members at the chamber. I don't know how that works, if it's just on their board or if we can sort of put it out to, I guess I'll leave that up to the chamber, but they have thousands of members, and I think that's a fair and open process. So I would support that.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Carasali.
if my memory recollects here, I think the understanding was they agreed to put forward the most knowledgeable person on tourism, whether it was in their organization or available or in their opinion. So that's just was one of the ingredients that they agreed to follow, or the conditions anyway.
And I think that's a great point. And I think that I haven't had the opportunity to speak with Mr. De La Rosa or the chamber, or Mr. Hicks specifically. I mean, I've had a brief meeting with Mr. Hicks, but I'd like to sit with him more and discuss kind of where we're going as a board and what we're doing. So, Mr. Mavrides.
I'm just curious, going forward, if this is going to be the way we operate, are we going to ask every organization to present multiple candidates in the future as appointments come up?
I don't think that this is, I just want to make sure that we're having an opportunity to vet these. I didn't say multiple candidates.
Yeah.
I want to make sure that we have an opportunity to vet the candidates as we see fit, to make sure that there's an aptitude and a taste for this board. That's really what I'm trying to achieve here. Mr. Lawson.
That was going to be my question is, so the chamber comes back and says Mike's the best qualified guy, we're not submitting another name. Now what?
And I think that's fine. I mean, like I said, I just want an opportunity. I'm asking this board for an opportunity to vet through all the elected so that we can, because it is, like I said, a taxing agency, and I want to make sure the most qualified person is available to do that job. And if they feel that that's the only selection they want to bring forth.
So I can speak to that a little bit. The statute provides that these organizations can nominate a candidate or candidates. The electeds can discuss it, and if they essentially reject the nomination, they can require the organization to bring forward a new list of candidates. And so I think you're talking about two separate things here. Are we essentially tabling this to take more time to have a discussion with Mr. Hicks, or are we going back to the chamber and asking them to provide a new candidate or candidates?
Well, it looks like there's been, both items have been discussed. I'm looking for direction from the board. I would like to do one of the two at this point, and not go forward with the appointment today, but either have an opportunity. And I think that if we brought forth candidates from the chamber, it would be an opportunity for us to vet all of those candidates. And if they so bring forward just one candidate, which is Mr. Hicks, that gives us an opportunity to vet him prior to appointing him to the seat. So I would, in my opinion, it would be potentially rejecting the nomination for this at this time, and asking them to bring back in, if Mr. Hicks comes back with that on that list, and he's the only one on that list, it gives us an opportunity for as the electeds to vet that person. Mr. Lawson.
So if we're going to make this the policy, then the NRA is going to need to submit more than one name from now on too. I mean, it seems disingenuous. I mean, we didn't have the same discussion when Mr. Winters was appointed, and that was the only name submitted by the NRA. So and if you're looking for diversity, I don't know that diversity and qualifications are the same thing. So I get what you're saying, but not because you're of a particular ethnicity or sex doesn't make you the most qualified person. So I'm okay with that. I mean, I think it's, but I'll tell you what, it's when it comes to an NRA appointment, I'm going to hold them to the same standard.
I think we should, I think we should as a board. This is something that we need to discuss, and every candidate should be vetted by the electeds. And being that there's only 3 electeds on this board at this time, I think it's important for us to do so as a board. It's important.
And the same goes for the airport. For everybody who has a seat on this board, we're gonna require the same
And I
level.
believe at the airport, they do come before council. They're, they submit. I also think, and I agree with your point, Mr. Ed Lawson, but I also think in the spirit of full transparency, I think moving forward, because we have given up seats, maybe we look at how we appoint people a little bit differently. I haven't had the opportunity to sit down with him. He seems great. He's probably very well qualified, and if he ends up being the one, then I think that's fantastic. Whenever you say, is this how this board's going to operate moving forward? Yes, I hope it is, because it is in the spirit of full transparency, and I think that's only fair. I did have the opportunity to sit down with Mr. Winters. He reached out to me. We had a very long conversation. He came to my office. I think, people were very comfortable knowing your background, that you, what you have accomplished, your role in tourism with gaming. Was, I think people were very comfortable with that. And I'm not saying anything against Mr. Hicks whatsoever, but I would certainly respect the request of Mr. Chair Bob Lucey.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Carasali?
I'm from the airport, representing the Airport Authority, so I'll let the board know I'm open for interviews at any time. Then anybody that wants to either take me off the board or keep me on is fine.
I appreciate that. Thank you, Mr. Carasali. I would agree with Ms. Schieve. We do the same thing at the county. We vet a number of our applicants prior to their appointment to any board that we have the oversight over. Airport Authority, the Assembly, everybody. We do a strong, hard vetting, and I think this board should be treated just as such, and not just because we got a letter in the mail. Sorry, that's how I feel about that. So I'm going to take a motion. I'm looking for a motion from, I'll make the motion that we reject the Chamber's nomination at this time and request the Chamber bring back a list of candidates with an appropriate time for the elected officials to vet those candidates. I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Aye. I have 2 for, 1 against, with Mr. Lawson being against. Motion passes. So, Mr. Hicks, I apologize. Thank you for coming this morning, but like I said, we just would like to make sure the process is done right. And just for the record, I would like to clarify that Mr. Hicks could be a part of that list for the nominees from the Chamber. We're not excluding Mr. Hicks. I think he should be. We'd just like to see an opportunity for all of us to vet Mr. Hicks. Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 2, election of vice chairman pursuant to NRS 244A.611. At this time, and this is, go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
So I'll just briefly outline the procedure. So the procedure to elect a vice chair, the motion is made, seconded, and voted upon to open the floors for nominations. Board members submit their nominations for vice chair. A motion is made to close nominations, and then the nominees are discussed and voted on. And this is voted on by the entire board.
Okay. Mr. Farahi.
I would like to nominate Mr. Ed Lawson for that position, please.
I have a nomination for Ed Lawson.
Mr. Chair,
Yes.
I make a motion that we close the balloting for the vice chair.
Close
With
nomination.
After Mr. Lawson's name.
Any other nominations by any other board members at this time? Looks like Mr. Lawson, you have been nominated, so we need to take a vote. I need to take a vote on the appointment of Mr. Ed Lawson to vice chair. All those in favor of Ed Lawson being vice chair? Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, carries unanimous. Oh, motion carries unanimous. Congratulations, Mr. Vice Chair.
Thank you.
Number 3, election of secretary treasurer pursuant to NRS 244A-.611. Mr. Kennedy.
So this is the same process, assuming that we want the secretary and chair to be one individual. We just need a motion at the outset to combine those 2 positions. but you don't have to.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. All right, Mr. Farahi.
I nominate Mr. Nat Carasali for that position.
And are we going to nominate him for both secretary and treasurer as a
As
singular,
one, yes.
singular position?
Singular
Okay.
position.
Okay. I have a nomination for Mr. Carasali. Any other nominations at this time? Seeing none, I'll close the nominations. Mr. Carasali, looking for a vote to elect Mr. Nat Carasali as the secretary and treasurer of the RSCVA board. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Too late, sir, too late. Congratulations, Mr. Carasali. All right, number 4, CEO search update. Mrs. Rezek.
Good morning. The CEO Search Committee will meet on March 30th, and they will have presentations by 4 CEO search firms, Lapham, Boyden, Vetted, and Athos. Per this board's direction, the top 2, as voted on and recommended by the CEO Search Committee, will move to this board, present to this board for the selection process. My recommendation, and I would just like to get some guidance from the board, is to possibly, once we know who those 2 are, is to have a draft contract ready for discussion and possible action at that meeting that the CEO search firms do present at. And so I just wanted to get some direction on that.
Do we need that in a form of a motion, or can
You could
the
just-
chair say yes?
You could just say, yes, that's
Okay.
how we would like to proceed.
I'm going to leave this up to Mrs. Schieve and Mr. Lawson, as they were part of that CEO search committee.
I'm
Yeah.
good with, I
Yeah.
think we need to move on. And
Yeah,
And the faster we do it, the better.
I'm in agreement. So that is our direction to you, Mr. Farahi.
With the proviso that whoever is going to be doing the search has to be here that day, not some salesperson from the firm coming here making a sale. We like to see who's going to be doing it, what's their experience, what's their track record.
Agreed. We have given that direction to all 4 search firms multiple times, and I have also put it in writing to them that that is what is expected and who is supposed to be here for the presentation before the search firm, as well as to the board.
So we are having then the contract ready, if I heard the motion correctly, that once we select the firm, we can go ahead right away sign with them.
That would be the goal, absolutely.
Are we going to be sending the sample contract to them before that date, so they have done their homework and they are ready for us to sign it?
My suggestion would be to send the sample contract to the 2 that are selected, not to all 4 at this point. The 2 that are recommended to come present to the board. So the CEO search firm or search firm committee is listening to 4. They go to 2, those 2.
That's right. Those 2 you will be sending it to them.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Also, I will not be in attendance on March 30th. I have a conflict at that time.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Winters. All right, Mrs. Resnick, I think you got enough direction.
Thank you. I do.
Thank you. All right, so we're not taking any action on that at this point. At this point, I know we have Mr. Chisel here from the City of Reno to do a presentation on the surcharge. I'd like to get that presentation done first, so if it's okay with the board, I'd like to make a motion to take the presentation by the City of Reno out of order prior to the strategic plan update. I'll make a motion. Can I get a second, please?
Yes,
Have a second?
Yes, I
All those in
need him to get
favor?
back to
All those
work.
favor? Yeah, we need him to get back to work.
He's
All
a
those
very
in
busy man. I need
All
him
those in
back to
favor
work.
of that motion signify by saying yes. Aye. All those opposed. Motion carries unanimously. Mr. Chisel. Sorry to throw you on the spot so quickly.
Mouse impaired on this. Robert Chisel, Director of Finance and Administration, for the record, for the City of Reno. I've been asked today to come and talk about the capital project surcharge.
or the $2 surcharge, as it's sometimes referred to. I'm going to briefly kind of go through the authorization, usage, and governance of the $2 surcharge, talk about the financials, the balance in the account, the revenue we have received since implementation of the surcharge, the expenditures we have taken, the projects where the expenditures have taken place, and potential future projects. There's a lot of slides here, but I'll try to go quickly through them. Basically, the $2 surcharge was authorized by the legislature in 2011 through AB 376. It is a $2 surcharge on the per room night for properties with a non-restricted gaming license, basically in the downtown district, the downtown properties. By ordinance of 6195, the city of Reno established the fund. And pursuant to AB 376, this is important to remember, the money is solely to pay the cost of improving and maintaining publicly owned facilities for tourism and entertainment in the district or within 1 mile outside the boundaries of the district. And this is important to remember, except for a minor league baseball stadium project as defined in NRS 244A. And that is basically referring to the baseball, the Aces baseball team. So it has to be used for publicly owned facilities for tourism and entertainment in the downtown area or within 1 mile of that downtown area. This is kind of a ugly little map, but kind of shows the downtown district in green and then the approximate 1 mile boundary, and basically goes up to close to McCarran and Virginia on the north and down to Mount Rose Street and Virginia on the south, out past Keystone to the west, and kind of out toward Sutro to the east. So that's just kind of the area where the surcharge can be used and applied. Governance, back in 2011, the City Council established a subcommittee. The subcommittee currently has 3 council members and 3 public members. These are the members of the subcommittee as it stands now. The subcommittee makes recommendations to the council on how the $2 surcharge will be applied and used. However, the council makes the final say and decision on all expenditures. All expenditures require a 2/3 majority vote of the city council. So now into the financials. As of March 1st, 2016, the fund had $2.8 million in it. That's after all expenditures to date. This is the revenues that we have received through the years. The fund started in 2011. It was actually late July when it started, so that's why it was a little bit less in 2012. Those are the revenues we've received through 2015, and in 2016, that's the revenues we've received to date. So $9.3 million. The other revenue was for sale of plans, and when we did a couple of the projects, we sold off equipment, so we were able to replenish some numbers. These are the expenditures. Basically, all the expenditures that we have taken and all the projects we have done to date. LEC refers to the Livestock Event Center, NBS refers to the Bowling Stadium, and REC refers to the Reno Event Center. And I'll go through each of these projects, but it just kind of shows in total we've spent about $6.5 million.
Excuse me, do we have a handout on this presentation?
We can get you one. Yeah. So just kind of I'm just going to go through all these expenditures, and they're on that sheet that I handed out. The City Center, $324,000 was for the City Center Plaza, which is across from the bowling stadium and kind of just to the west of the bowling stadium. It was to clean up the plaza and remodel one of the existing buildings that was used to be an RTC bus depot into the police department substation. That was in 2012. We did a feasibility study on the projects, looking at all those, the ballroom, the city center, the bowling stadium, and the Reno Event Center at the beginning of this, to look at the designs and how they could all be incorporated together. That was $43,000. For the Livestock Event Center, we contributed with the Reno-Sparks Convention Visitors Authority to help pay for the painting of the buildings of the Livestock Event Center. That was back in 2014. I'm sure this board's all very familiar with that. We also paid for replacing the seats in the Livestock Event Center. That was a $374,000 replacement in 2014 also. We also helped contribute to the sign, I guess rehab, refresh, whatever you might want to call it, at the Livestock Event Center. It was with RSCVA and the Reno Rodeo Association. So all three of us contributed an equal amount to update the sign. And then we contributed $100,000 for a sound system at the Livestock Event Center also. And then at the National Bowling Stadium, on the first floor, on the north side of the bowling stadium, used to be just empty offices and storage. That was remodeled into a Hall of Fame museum for $709,000. And as we get into the things with the National Bowling Stadium, a lot of them are identified in the contract the RSCVA, the City of Reno, and the USBC has with each other for the conventions that come into Reno. So this was one of the requirements of the USBC, was to create a Hall of Fame museum. It was primarily oriented around women professional bowlers. Also on the south end of the first floor of the National Bowling Stadium, that used to be a restaurant. It was had a billiard club there for a while. We remodeled that first floor and added 10 bowling lanes into the basement, or in the first floor there. Has a sports bar type area there, and I believe it's also rented out quite frequently for smaller events. There was also a lane replacement. We replaced all 78 bowling lanes on the competition area of the bowling stadium. That was $462,000. Maintenance, various HVAC or HVAC chillers. There's been a lot of problems with the HVAC at the bowling stadium as it gets to that age. So we spent about $183,000 on that. We also painted the exterior of the bowling stadium. First time it had been painted. That was a $156,000 project back in 2014. And we also replaced the roof at the bowling stadium. That was $403,000 back in 2013. We also replaced the masking unit and returns in the bowling stadium. Those are the ball returns and the end masking. It kind of matched the Kingpin Club on the first floor, so there was a similarity between all those. That was a $100,000 project. The squad room, that's also back in, if you're familiar with the bowling stadium, back behind the bowling lanes where the teams get ready to go out and bowl, where they check their scores, the squads get together. We remodeled that. There was also problems with the back windows. It was that greenhouse glass, if you're familiar with the greenhouse glass that used to be at the more of the bowling stadium. It was leaking and causing problems, and that was repairs done there. It was $775,000. We also replaced the video screens across the back of the bowling stadium at the competition lanes, and the center video screen, those were also replaced, and that was $556,000 project. At the Reno Event Center, we did some minor capital repairs to railings and joints for about $14,000. We are in the process, actually it's just finished, but we haven't made the final payment. That's why you see expenditures to date of $17,000. The expected project is going to be about $315,000. That's to replace the current rigging that extended over the center floor. This allows for more booking of different types of events at the Reno Event Center. Like I said, it's in process. It's pretty much finished, but we haven't made the final payment yet. Also at the Reno Event Center, we did a hockey study due to interest in hosting a minor league hockey team. We looked at the cost, what it would take to put a hockey rink in the Reno Event Center. That was an $18,200. It was primarily an architectural study at the cost of putting in a hockey arena in the Reno Event Center. And then these are the potential future projects that, you know, it haven't been approved, but they are potential future projects that we have put on our capital improvement list as we go out into the future. A couple of them are required by the USBC contract, and I'll mention those. They are the fourth floor remodel and the refurbish of the exterior kind of halfway down these are all estimated costs. These are not hard dollar costs. This is just to try to get a future projection of where we're going with the dollars. So this is one that is pretty close to, well, actually it was pretty close to being bid out. We had put this out to bid. Basically the chiller system that we have, the piping system we have to heat and cool the bowling stadium has been leaking the joints, and particularly above the bowling lanes, it is leaking. And so we were looking at total repair. We had a consultant come in and look at and make a recommendation on how to do the repairs and replacements. And we put this project out to bid. And actually, we're supposed to open the bid documents this week. However, we had no bidders. We had a number of people pull bid documents, but none of them have bid. We're trying to contact the contractors to find out why they didn't bid. Was it too busy? Was there too much risk? Was there some other problem? And we'll probably have to figure out how we're going to proceed from there. But at the time, it was estimated the total project was going to be about $2.5 million to replace the pipe joints and replace the system. In future, we're looking at probably doing some more HVAC onto the controls and modifications to the system in the bowling stadium, replacing furniture and fixtures as they age out, they start to wear out. Fire alarm system will probably have to be modernized in 2019 is what we're looking at, and some doors. Again, these are all just projections, and as we go forward, looking at the needs of the different buildings. This fourth floor remodel is from $3.5 to $5 million. This is required with the contract we have with the USBC, the RSCVA, and the City of Reno. In that, it requires us to demolish the existing stadium seating that's above the competition lanes and replace it with some flexible spacing, also construct a new food and beverage outlet up on the fourth floor. So depending on how that project is undertaken, it could be $3.5 to $5 million as an estimate at this time. That needs to be completed by February 1st, 2020 in the contract. The refurbish of the exterior, as this is also required in the contract we have with USBC. We are required to do certain facility upgrades and renovations of the exterior. It was not clearly identified, but we're supposed to work with the USBC to identify what those changes were to be, and that was supposed to be done by February 1st, 2022. Future projects, we're looking at bringing to council economic analysis of the feasibility and demand for a hockey league team in the city of Reno. This would be, is recommended by the subcommittee. It's to go to the University of Nevada, Reno to work with them to identify the feasibility, economic feasibility of a minor league hockey team and the demand for hockey within the Reno area. And then this is the rigging. It's in a future project because, well, we haven't paid for it. It's also in the projects that are undergoing. Like I said, we'll be making those payments when the project is completed and we've signed off on it. We're looking at also some security system upgrades to the Reno Event Center, about $15,000. And that is pretty much everything you probably want to know about the $2 surcharge as fast as I could go. So, any questions?
How often does the committee meet?
The committee meets probably every other month. There is no set time or place. It's more based on demand as these projects come. We were we're tentatively scheduled to meet March 31st next week. One of the things we were hoping to do was discuss the bids on the HVAC, but at this point, we'll probably be discussing what we're going to do and how we're going to proceed on the HVAC replacement.
Sure. I have a more fundamental question regarding these $2. And again, it's when there was not the surcharge for outside of downtown, that could be understood why there is the $2 is only going for projects in downtown. Now that the properties outside of downtown are contributing $2 and downtown increased theirs to $3, it just to me is not right that the outside of town is putting the $2 in the general fund and the $2 strictly is going for the projects within downtown. Because if that's the case, then I believe we should move for the legislation to bring outside of downtown to $3 next year. And then there should be a subcommittee to take $2 of that $3 for projects outside of downtown where we need to do work. There's a lot of needs outside of downtown. This convention center, the other facilities that we may want to be spending money on or upgrading on that. So this is my issue, fundamental issue. If that $2 is not going to come back into the general fund, then I believe that the outside property should move for the $3 next year, which I think $2 to $3 does not make much of a difference to the guests. And then there should be another subcommittee put together for the $2 for outside of downtown to make it a level playing field.
I just want to point out that the money that was being spent downtown is benefiting the whole community. An example is Carrie Underwood's coming in next month, sold out instantly. That in-around rigging that was done allowed her to perform here. We have ticket buys for most of the casinos in town, including outer line casinos. But hopefully we can have a conversation about benefiting the whole community. I know the Livestock Event Center benefits properties outside of downtown as well, and I hope that this board can continue the discussion and continue looking at the big picture as we head forward with the strategic plan. We took this on upon ourselves because we couldn't get any support from outside property, so we did it ourselves downtown. But I don't want this to be a downtown outside property conversation. I hope that we can look at the big picture and talk about the Reno-Sparks market, Tahoe market in whole.
Thank you, Mr. Mavrides. Mr. Carasali?
I didn't say.
Oh, your
Mr.
mic
Chair?
is on.
Mr.
Oh, it
Lucey?
is?
What
Yeah.
about
I'm
the
sorry.
possibility of having a $2 subcommittee outside of downtown?
I think that's your idea to voice, Ms. Schieve. Mr. Farahi?
Yeah. You know, that is only, again, matter of fairness. If there's going to be a $2 there, as long as we bring it up to $3, so the whole committee is at $3, then, because last meeting of the Finance Committee, there is some monies that are going to be needed to upgrade the Livestock Event Center, which is absolutely needed. I think it's a great facility. We need to upgrade it. But the money, half of it is going to be coming from the general fund outside of this organization. If that facility is within 1 mile of that district and $2 of it is being set aside for facilities in that district, then we should not dip into the general fund here to take the other 50% to spend on the livestock event center. This is not right.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. I want to just make sure some clarifications here. This is just a presentation in regards to the capital projects. If we want to have a further discussion in regards to the surcharge committee, for the $2 surcharge committee, we can agendize that for another meeting, but due to the constraints of the open meeting law, we've got to stick to the agenda, because it just is the presentation and the projects within the surcharge. So is there any questions further for Mr. Chisel at this time that anybody would like to ask specifically about the surcharge? Okay. Mr. Mavrides.
I'd just like to thank Mr. Chisel for all the work he's done. I've been on that committee since its inception, and he's been a great resource for us and kept us on track and done a terrific job. Thank you.
Mr. Well, Mr. Chisel, I appreciate you taking the time to come and present that to us. It's a wealth of information, so thank you.
Thank you.
All right, let's, moving back, we're going to go back to item 5, which is the strategic plan update, primary market segment opportunities. Mrs. Olson, Mr. Olson.
Good morning, everyone. Erica Olson for the record.
And Howard Olson for the record from On Strategy. Thank you for the time this morning.
We should have in front of you a revised, or sort of the next iteration of the draft strategic plan as it's coming together with a big paper clip, or actually not even, big binder clip. So the intention, of course, is that replaces what was provided at the last board meeting. We're going to keep building on it, so that's the intention. A couple quick things. We, of course, can go as long or as short as the board would like. We've got about 20 minutes of content, and if the board chooses to dig in further, we can certainly do so, but we'll keep it short and sweet. Just a quick orientation. You've seen this before. This is the planning process and the key milestones that we're working off of. Last board meeting, we presented, or we delivered, 3 lines of business and the associated facilities. The 3 lines of business were bowling, equestrian, and concerts and events, and the 3 associated facilities that utilize those lines of business the most to deliver the room nights. Okay. Coming into today, the focus is conventions and groups, as well as sports. What we're prepared to deliver today is conventions and groups. We decided to hold on sports because the conventions and groups segment is so large that we thought, A, it's too much information, and B, we just need another couple of weeks to finalize the sports segment. So that will be forthcoming in April, and then also in April will be leisure. So that's marketing and leisure with just a kind of a point of information there. We'll be taking that particular work up to the place that is needed for the brand agency, marketing agency to build out a full-blown marketing plan. So we're clear that we're building the corporate direction for marketing, but just enough to give direction to the agency. So just as how that's planning on coming together.
Mrs. Olson. Mr. Farahi.
My question is, this is based on what? What study? Again, is the study that John Cutts has done, is it complete?
Right. So fair enough. So the information that's in the strategic plan document is a combination, as we said at the last board meeting, it's a combination of data from Mr. Cotts, from the RSCVA databases, of which there are 2 primary ones, plus the MINT database, which that acronym stands for.
Doesn't stand for any acronym. It's DMAI, Destination Marketing Association's International CRM database.
Got it. And all of our analysis. So that's what's in the document. And
Yeah, but John Cutts has not made his final presentation. So there is a committee here. My concern is that we're putting the cart before the horse. Again, he's supposed to have done a study so we can clearly understand the opportunities for us for the next 5 years. So then for you guys to put that study into a strategic plan form. So we have not, at least I have not heard the final report from John Cox, so then we can take that information and put it in this format.
Okay, so what we did was we have a draft deliverable from Mr. Kotz. A final draft. What we have done as the recommendations from us and also from staff is we have taken all of that information and pulled the components that are specifically addressing the requests from the board related to opportunities, facilities, best in class, all of those things, and they're organized in that document, so it's very logical through the lines of business, through the opportunities, through the facilities. The draft document that Mr. Kotz has provided us, we can deliver it at some point in time once he's finalized it, but right now it's going to be very confusing because we pulled information in to create a plan. And
Mr. Chair and this board, I'm really afraid we spend all this time to work on this strategic plan, and again, we're going on a wrong direction. We are again cutting corners on that. We paid John Cox a good sum of money to do the study, and we really need to hear from John Cox and look at his report, make sure the report is, we accept that report, then we put it in a strategic plan document. If that report is not accepted, again, please, those of you speak up if you do not agree. I'm very concerned. We have gone through this process in this organization so many times, and again, I think we are cutting corners, and we are not going to get the job done right. That's I have a very, very serious concern here.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. And I just want to make one quick comment. And I appreciate where you're coming from, and I think what I'm hearing is that you would like some subsequent data information from John Cox so that as you go through the strategic plan that you have a clear, so you can compile it yourself and cross-reference. Is that what you're asking?
Absolutely, and I understand. I want to understand from John Cox. We asked him to look at this market and global market of tourism.
Right.
Tell us where are the opportunities for this destination, where is the best it is class for each one of the facilities we have here, how long it should take to get to that point, and I have none of that information. We are going right into a strategic plan without having the fundamental study that we see is completed and finished and we depend on.
Yeah. Okay. To Mr. Farahi, you know, and this is what I had asked of the board last time Mrs. Olson was here, was to go back. She provided us last time with the 3 lines of business and the brief overall summary. And I asked every board member to please read that and please vet all of that information for any of the information that you didn't specifically, because it's difficult for us to sit here and not give specific direction based upon the information that we have been provided. And that if you don't like the information that we have, because it's difficult for us to give them direction to do a certain task if we don't know what they, and so I've asked, hopefully all the board members have had an opportunity to vet this. I've read through it. I've obviously now just got the conventions groups and have the conventions groups to go through before I could vet that with Mrs. Olson and her team. But hold on, Mr. Fry, 1 second. Mr. Mavrides.
I have a couple of comments. First of all, when is John Cox going to have a final draft? It was due in December. A strategic plan was due in December. Now we're here in March waiting for John Cox. First question is, when are we going to see that? The second point is, we've had 3 consultants involved in this thing. I think it's time to move forward. I would love to see I agree with Mr. Farahi. It would be nice to have John Cox information and see the source of some of the strategic initiatives in here and planning. But we need to move forward. I don't know where John Cox is and where his plan is, or his study. I guess it's turned into a study from a strategic plan. Where are we at with that?
Mrs. Olson.
Yeah, if I could, please. So we took the entire document that Mr. Cox provided us, disaggregated every single page of it, incorporated it in a logical flow, and filled in all of the blanks, and we've been working on that for the past 3 months. So what's in here is a logical flow based on the data that we have additional major analysis that's been done to fill in the blanks that he didn't deliver, and we're ready with a summary of opportunities, a summary of facility analysis to move into ROI against opportunities and expenses to grow this organization. We can provide the draft document that he did. I would like to just put a big fat asterisk that says it's not organized in a meaningful way, and the data that we have worked on over the past 3 months is far surpassed what he provided. So you will not be happy with having to cross-reference this and that. That's why we did the heavy lifting for the board. You will see all of the references in here from him. It says CSL after every single thing that he provided. So that's the answer.
Mr. Farahi.
This is also, with all due respect, you are not expert in tourism. We brought an expert to do the study. We have paid him tremendous amount of monies. There is a committee here, Mr. Chairman, that's supposed to vet those things, look at that study, see whether he did his homework, make sure that what we are relying on is something that is complete, is done. If not, we're going to be in the same place we were in all these years with this organization. We're cutting corners and we're not getting the job done. Let him come make his presentation. There's a committee, we vet it out. And again, I urge every member of this board, please speak up, because we will do injustice to this community if we do not do our job again right. He hasn't come, and I hear is a draft formed. The draft does not mean it's complete. We paid him monies, he needs to come make a presentation so we make sure his job is done, then more power to you. We can take that and put it into a strategic plan. So I will not be voting, I'm going to say that right now, for any of these till we get the report from John Cotts and make sure he has done his job. And I, for one, will not be pushing this process because it has taken so long. We're going to just push it through and get it done like we have done in the past. This is not how to run a business.
So
Thank
do
you,
we
Mr.
give
Farahi.
her
Ms.
the opportunity to
Ms. Schieve.
present? I mean, I think she's come here and put a lot of work into this. So I would like to find out from the board which direction you guys would like to go. I think we've worked with you. I think you've done a great job. So, I mean, I think it's only fair that, you know, we probably look at this document and take things out of it that we think are pertinent and that can be helpful to us. And then I would agree with you, having a presentation from him would be very solid. I think we need to do that. We paid him a lot of money, and I think we owe it to this board to do that as well. So, but I want to make sure that, you know, sometimes you just take bits and pieces of things that work. So, I mean, I understand your frustration, John. I mean, this has been sort of a brutal process. I think we all had hoped that it would go one way and it went a different way, but I also think that there might be things in here that everyone wants to listen to and take some things out of it that might be beneficial moving forward.
Mr. Lawson.
So I'm going to give you what my recollection is. I got on the board a year ago December, and I read the contract with Mr. Cotts, and I said, there's nowhere in there to say he's going to provide a strategic plan, which we kept saying it was a strategic plan, but he never wrote it in his contract. When it didn't show up in November, that is when we decided we need someone else to develop the strategic plan based on the information that Mr. Cotts did. And that's how we have come with Ms. Olson in this company. So we had no confidence in him in November, December. We decided to move in a different direction and have on strategy provide the plan. And now we're going to go back to Mr. Cotts, who, in my opinion, doesn't have the capability to do a strategic plan. But that's my recollection. If I'm wrong, I'll gladly be corrected.
Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Lawson, I agree with you. He didn't put it in his strategic plan, but the contract that was signed with John Cox was signed by the previous CEO without this board looking at it, seeing what the final contract is. Okay, fine. We have brought Mrs. Olson on board and her team to put it in the strategic plan, fine. But this has to be based on a research that was done by expert in the field of tourism, which is John Cox is recognized as that. So if we do not have his report finished and we have not accepted that report, then I don't know how anybody can put it in a strategic plan, especially ourselves. We are responsible. So some of us are in tourism business. We like to look at that plan, accept John Cox's plan before it is put in the strategic plan.
Mr. Carasali.
First of all, I'd like to commend Mrs. Olson and her team. They're doing a hell of a job, taking a pile of whatever and really digging in and getting some facts that we should see. But it appears that we have two choices. One is they stop. We bring in John Katz and he sends finishes his report and whatever. Then they take all that stuff and put it in their report for the final document, or they can continue and down the road they're going, bring John Katz in as soon as possible, and whatever he comes up with that they haven't seen or whatever, they can supplement what they've already continued to do rather than stop them. Let's let them continue, bring Katz in and supplement. They would supplement with his finished document, and then we get what John and everybody else is looking for. That make sense?
Yeah.
Mrs. Olson.
Okay, so if I could, just to follow on, let's just, let me take 2 minutes and orient the board to what we have here, where the John Cox information is, and then you can decide what you want to do about it. Our job, as I see it, is not only to help pull together everything that's been done to date and move it forward. Our job is also to serve it up in a meaningful, productive way for this body to make decisions. So that's what we're doing. And certainly if we want to, look at all these other reports in different fashions, by all means. My direction to my team and to this team is put it together in a meaningful way to make decisions. So with that in mind, if we could just for 2 seconds, hop into this document. It's not all of the pages are here on purpose. So if the second page is the table of contents, it gives you an idea of where we're headed. But flip over to page 13, please. It's not like sequentially 13, but it's about 5 pages in. It says Opportunity Investment Summary. So you will see, starting on the top of page 14, this is the uber executive summary of all of the other 150 pages of information in here that gets you to an understanding by line of business, what percentage of room nights this particular line of business, let's just say conventions, makes up of the total RSCVA business over the past 5 years. How many room nights did they deliver? What's the outlook look like, just like you would in an investment outlook, invest, maintain, divest? And then what is our forecast for the next 5 years based on all of the opportunities that we pulled together over the past 3 months? The opportunities are listed in the middle. They are broken down into 3 different strategies. First strategy is retention steady state. What happens if we just keep on keeping on? If we invest, what does the potential new growth look like? And what are some innovative ideas that might take more disproportionate investment, and what does that get us? There are 5 lines of business, and we've done that for every single line of business. If you flip then to page, just like 2 more pages in, it's numbered page 25, it says concerts and ticketed events. If you want to dig into all of the detail on what were the room nights, the historical room nights, what are the key observations, what are the strategic issues we need to answer, where are the room nights coming from this retain, growth, innovate, all of the market perspective, the trends, the competitive set, you can see on page 28, there's references to all the stuff from John Cox, key success factors, what we've done to date from a facility analysis perspective, why we lost business, flipping over to page 31, where we think the business should go, the opportunities, the risks, and a detailed build out of each opportunity for the next 5 years. What does the room nights look like? What do the investments look like? And we did that for every single line of business, and that's all the information that's in here with John Cotz's data. That does a bottom-up opportunity build. So that gives you an idea of what we have here and what's been done over the past 3 months with this team, with John Cotz's information, with our work. And I think we've moved very far down the field, quite frankly. So I went over that sort of quickly, but that gives you an idea of how we incorporated the industry expertise into here, filled in the blanks that he didn't have, and we're starting to build a plan for the future. So what? So where are we going? And that's what the perspective is here so far, anyways.
Sure.
One second, Mr.
Just quickly, to Mr. Farahi's point, Ms. Howard Olson, John Cotz's report is 99-point-something% finished. I mean, he's only got a couple open items.
He's mainly just correcting typos and grammatical errors, so yes.
So we're working with almost a full deck. He hasn't presented, Mr. Farahi.
Yeah, but he has not presented to this body. This body is the responsible body to accept that report before we put it in a strategic plan. We may challenge some of his studies that you are going to be depending on. We may challenge some of those studies and say we don't agree with that. And you may be depending on some assumptions by him or his report that may not be accurate or correct because you may not have the expertise to know what those areas are, what areas he didn't do his job. So this body has the responsibility of reviewing that study and approving it before we put it in the strategic plan. You guys, I have no issue with the work your team is doing. That's not the issue. The issue is, again, for me, working on this plan now for 2 years since I came on this board, to do it right so for once in the history of this organization, we have done it correctly, and that is my concern. Your process, God bless you, fine, you're putting it, I just want to make sure his plan that he's presented is complete before you take that and put it in this strategic study.
And I agree with you that it's your responsibility to accept and approve it, but the recommendations that are in here, just so you, just a side note, this is being built as a full team. It's not just our team, and then we kind of, we're working on this, vetting it, everything together, so all the staff has put into the thoughts and so forth about the, all John Cotz's, points and so forth. We vetted all together. So it is going through. It's not just with us. It's also with them. And I understand your point, and I agree with you.
Yeah. Again, the staff, I have no problem with the staff. But staff, the reason we brought somebody from external who's expert in tourism in this country is to really do an independent study. If we needed the staff to do it, we would never have to hire somebody from outside. So it is, for me, is critical that we accept that report, and if there are some shortcomings in that report, he completes it, so our strategic plan that is based on that report is complete.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi. Ms. Schieve.
Yeah, I would suggest, looking at this, there's some amazing information in here. So I think that we should allow her to present. I think that would be very beneficial. So.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Schieve. Mr. Mavrides.
I agree, and make a further suggestion. I think we ought to have John Kotz out here in the next 30 days. This thing's gone on long enough. They can keep doing their terrific work, and if he has anything that we disagree with, I'm sure Erica and her team can make adjustments in their plan. This isn't a final document, so I think we need to move in parallel, but I think we need to get Mr. Kotz out here to wrap his work up soon.
Thank you, Mr. Mavrides. So at this point, Mr. Winters.
So also when we do that presentation with Mr. Kotz, making sure that they're in the room as well, so we can make sure that we understand the collaboration between the two.
Okay, so at this point, I'd like for Mrs. Olson for you to complete your presentation. I'm sure you have your presentation, and then we'll bring this back around for discussion at the end of the presentation. Is that amenable by everybody? Okay, thank you. Mrs. Olson, please.
All right. So this is the schedule that we're on. We are, again, we're working towards having a plan approved by July. That is what we're working hard on. We have these milestones in place for a reason. Next up, as discussed, is leisure, and then we'll also be providing sports. Again, we can figure out how the COTS presentation plays into all of this. We are confirmed for a June board retreat on the 28th, I believe. Okay, moving on. So what we wanted to do today is just give a really quick high-level perspective to everybody in the room related to the feedback that you all gave us on our one-on-one conversations with you, so you have that view. We need to be clear about the operating definitions that are in this document that was in your board packet, so we don't have to get into it in detail. I just want to make sure that we're clear. And then what we'd like to do is just share some high points from the analysis of conventions and groups, as well as the convention center, and then we'll wrap it up with how it's looking from a overall line of business and facility perspective, okay? So again, we could take hours on this. Our intention was just to take 15 or 20 minutes. Again, with the intention that it's just gonna give you an orientation of what's in here for conventions and groups for you to dig into it between now and the next month, because we were delivering it just now, but wanted to give you the orientation. So a couple of things that we just wanted to mention. We provided this in January when we first started working on this, and I'm not gonna go bullet point by bullet point through this, but we are struggling with, I would call it process creep, scope creep. We can throw everything and the kitchen sink into the strategic planning process. These were the critical strategic issues that you all said you wanted addressed when we spoke with you in December, and also when this process started 2 years ago. So with Fidelity, we are carrying these forward, and we're trying to stay really focused on answering these questions. We have answered most of these. We don't have decisions, but we have the base data to help build the plan. What we're still working on, of course, is the middle one there. Where do we focus our marketing spend? That will be part of April. And then, of course, the whole question is, there's no plan in here. This is a base set of data and opportunities and potential investments, et cetera. What we need to do in May is actually turn this into a plan, and that's the last bullet point that you're expecting related to performance expectations and metrics. So I just want to say that everything that might come into this process that doesn't directly tie to one of these bullet points, we're trying to just put that on the to-do list, but get to it after we get the core work done.
Mrs. Olson?
Yes.
I have a question. This is on your bottom number or line here. Establish RSCVA performance expectations and metrics. Can I bring up a fact about the facilities, or a question? I noticed on the projection going forward for fiscal 16-17 that the event center will have an operating profit of negative 31.8%. The livestock event center will be negative 55.3%. National Bowling Stadium is negative 342.4%. Convention Center is negative 81%, and Wild Creek is negative 11%. So if you take the 81%, which means if you take in $100, it's going to cost you $180 in expenses, relatively speaking. Or if you go to the bowling stadium, if you take in $1,000, you're going to lose $3. So some of these negative operating numbers seem extremely high, even for a convention center or convention organization that gives things away. So, but as I talked to Mr. Farahi this morning, and he brought up a great point, we're going to correct these problems and this negativity, or lower it, based on increasing the attendance or functions or whatever, whatever the thing is, bringing more people to our properties. So, but it takes a longer time to ramp up business to increase than it does to cut expenses. If it takes us 4 years to ramp up, if you look at these numbers, we could be leaving $1 million a year plus on the table. So my question to you is, how do we ramp up accordingly to get more business? And when do we put a stop to these humongous negative numbers as we move forward into the upper scale of improving our revenues to the offensive side? Otherwise, we will leave $3 to $5 million on the table. Just, could you address that in your?
So the expectation is, once we finish building out the whole opportunity side, we also have the facility side done as well. We'll be bringing all that together to start to build out an actual roadmap. We'll put the numbers to it, and that should answer that question. The idea is to do that in May, so that we have that to deliver. But I mean, absolutely. So for lack of a better word, there's the revenue side, there's the expense side. We're building out the revenue side right now. We've got the expense side analyzed. We need to actually build that into a plan. And what I think is important to note is what's in here right now is the comparative analysis against other facilities in the facility section. So what's going to be important for us to get from the board is what the acceptable level of performance and or loss is that we need to build to and or from, if you will. So, but right now we still have the pieces of it. We haven't pulled it together yet because we need to finish sports and leisure.
Just an interjection here. I don't think the board really knows what that number should be, what that negative number should be, or what our benchmark is that we should meet. I hopefully you can tell us in your research or whatever you find out there as comparables in the marketplace, what you would think would be, a number that is satisfactory.
So
I don't have any idea.
And so what's in here for Mr. Kotz is all of that analysis. So we have for all four of the facilities, the comparative set and where this organization stacks up against the comparative set from a loss perspective. So that helps us. And then from there, we need to decide how much we want to move in one direction or the other. Thank you. Yep. Okay, moving on. So these were just very quickly, based on the conversations that we had with board members to check in and make sure that we're heading in the right direction. This was the ask that came out of a lot of those conversations. Just kind of pointing them out is request to see how there's information in here that delivers the percentage of RSCVA originated business against the entire market. And so how does that compare to other CVBs? A staffing schedule for RSCVA owned facilities and managed facilities, that's going in the budget spreadsheets that Brian's doing. Compression or pipeline management, setting blocked room night targets so we know where we need to be at certain years out, so we know whether we're on target or not. And then this idea of, what are the best in class facilities and how do we compare? Mr. Carasali just brought that up. We have that. There's stuff that's been asked for that doesn't directly address some of the strategic issues that I mentioned. That's on the right-hand side. The cash comp thing, that's been delivered. A breakdown of operating deficit increasing and the expenses not decreasing for the bowling stadium. That's on the waiting list. There's some policy stuff that's been requested as well as board training. And then this request for, I just dubbed it all in cost per room night by facility. So that's, those are all of the requests. So you start to see that we're working on it. It's basically the answer. Okay, moving on quickly. This matters. This was delivered as part of the board packet. This was one of the requests to get clarity around I just call them operating definitions. So when we're using certain terms, we're all clear what we're using. Again, not going to read this in detail, but the point is when we look at the plan itself, the historical analysis is all based on consumed room nights. When we look at any information in here that's a forecast, it's all blocked room nights. And the operating cost per room night that's in the plan right now is specifically the facility loss divided by the consumed room nights attributed to that facility. It does not include any other expenses. Right. So those are just some important definitions. I don't know if we need to stop there or not. I know we use different things probably in our properties potentially, but those are the definitions that are used in the plan consistently and what they mean. Are there any questions about that?
Mr. Lawson?
Yeah, the Livestock Event Center, you have 4 spaces. What are we counting as the 4 spaces? I got the rodeo arena and I got the building.
You have the rodeo arena, the livestock pavilion, the main arena, and the exhibits hall.
Okay. Thank you.
Yep, okay. And again, as much as we'd like to try to simplify some of this, the different flow on room nights, room night booking, consumed room nights. There's a lot of different ways to talk about these things, so we've been very consistent about blocked and consumed, sir.
Mrs. Olson, I think in a prior board meeting, we talked about the definition of a book room night, and we're going along with the definition that was been used here for the last few years. And if you could really explain to the board in your final analysis, what, in your opinion, should be the definition of a book room night?
Is that in relation to
Not
compensation?
not and a booked cash room night. I forget, not a comp room night, but a booked cash room night.
Sorry, go ahead.
Mr. Carasali, I think one of the things that we've been putting forward is when the new president CEO comes in, that we will have that all defined out. We do have some information from John Kotz, as well as some other information that I gathered from other destinations that will bring to light what is booked and how we track and how does it compare within the industry. But the intent was that we will have that defined. We've kind of pushed that, kept pushing that forward. We've had this on the agenda two or three other times. And John Kotz has in his study some information about how other destinations are tracking it and all that kind of good stuff.
No, I understand that, but I know that. And that's why, but I'm asking her to take that information and give us their opinion. That make sense?
Yes, that makes sense.
Yes.
And I just want to.
I don't make sense, but that may.
This is also, so like I said, if we could just, I appreciate the questions and I want to make sure I'll cover all the questions, but I'd like to get through the presentation so that we can get to because I know all the board members have some sort of response for this. So please, Ms.
You got
Olson.
it. All right, so the one thing that we wanted to walk through as discussed is conventions and groups. Howard's going to give us the high points. And I just want to mention that the detail of it all starts on page 53. So half of this document is reflective of conventions and groups. So that should give you an idea of the depth of information here. So Howard, take it away.
So as part of this discussion on conventions and groups, I think it helps us to be grounded. I asked Mr. Leinen to kind of just give us an example of what the process is, what we go through in RSCVA, in booking, and how much time it takes, and the recording of information. So if you could just give us a high overview, we'll use this with the rest of the information then.
Sure. We prioritize our time and our efforts by market segments that best align with our destination attributes, whether that's from a facility standpoint, whether that's from logistics, how you get in, how you get out, flying wise, how you transportation on the ground, what our business economy is like and what it lines up with certain segments. So what is outlined here are those vertical segments that we think are best aligned with what the destination can perform best at. Relative to the timing, certain segments produce quicker, faster, and take longer, and some take longer. So if you look at corporate, franchise, multi-level, marketing, those tend to book shorter term, and those are a priority because we're trying to fill some short-term gaps. Some of the other segments are a little bit longer booking cycles, and so we keep that in mind, and that's also how we deploy our folks. We typically are deployed on a geographic basis so that we can maximize our budgets, and then within those geographics, we try to focus our time vertically. The sports segment is the one segment that is a complete vertical segment, and in this recommendations, you'll see that we're ready to start taking on the corporate sector. That is not a segment that we had been proactively pursuing. It's been more reactive in nature, and our recommendation in this process is that we might see an opportunity here to go after the corporate segment at this point in time.
Thank you. So as John said, we're focused on basically the 80-20 rule. There's a lot. There's 30-some different categorization from Destination Marketing Association, International DMAI. We aggregate that down. We've got that information within our own databases. And we've put them into these groups that you see up here, which account for about 80% of our room nights that we tracked and we generate here. So each one of those is grouped around a size that we can focus our efforts, plus also that has to do with how they behave as far as our marketing efforts and our messaging and information that goes out there as well. So our next step is we group those with John and his team and so forth, and we pulled information out of COTS report and so forth. We looked at the opportunities inside of it. So you'll see in your report, under corporate, for example, went out and found out that the forecast is it's not growing too much, but it's growing about 1.92% over the next couple of years. And that's a market that we've kind of labeled as we're thinking about investing in. The next one down is the multi-level. As John said, that books on a short-term basis. And that one's growing fairly well. And actually, the Reno area does well as far as picking that business up. It's kind of under the radar screen of a lot of other places. And we're looking at this with everybody's recommendations is labeled as investment. Heritage, patriotic. That particular market segment is declining. As you can imagine, a lot of the vets and so forth are getting older. That market is not growing. But we do really well with booking there, get some pretty big groups out of there. So we've labeled that as kind of a maintain. Next one is a STEM, that one's growing. That's an investment. The government entity grouping, there's a lot of different issues going on with that, and that's a declining market. We do happen to do really well with that market. It's forecast to decline at 1% over the next couple of years, so we've labeled that as maintain. We aggregated this industry associations together because Reno does pretty well with that. And we've labeled that as, it's, according to research shows it's grown about 2 to 3% a year. And so we're labeling that as investment because there are some things we have to do, in other words, to be really successful. The other bucket, I said represents about 20%. It's a mishmash. There's about 15 or so different segments in there, and we're just labeling that as maintained. So that's the kind of the overall perspective on how those roll up.
So just to clarify one thing, and you might be wondering about the quick summary that Howard just provided there. So we did a 5-year analysis on the win-loss ratio of why we win and why we lose, where we win and where we don't, size of convention, market segment, analysis to booked over the next 5 years, analysis against the overall market based on the Mint database. So that's where the information that Howard just summarized in 30 seconds came from. This particular conventions and groups, of course, is the huge future of what we need to build a plan for. So not just talking about conventions and groups as one big bucket, but rather looking at the key segments and really understanding what's going on so John's team can be targeted is the purpose of the perspective that Howard just provided.
So because we're planners, and as Mr. Farahi said, you know, we don't have the expertise as far as the tourism and so forth. So we're pulling this together, and part of the planning and taking this information is bring focus. And instead of taking, as we would call the old scattergun, and trying to do a little bit of everything, we're focusing on those areas we think we can, through RSCVA staff, be able to generate some growth, and you'll see the numbers and so forth as we go into it. But below that, because we also find they're not all created equal, there's this grouping into 100 to 500 peak room nights, and those fit into the hotel properties really well. And we also group it into the 500 to 3,000 peak room nights, and those are, you know, more or less what we call the citywides and so forth. And of those two, we do really well. We being the RSCVA team, success rate with the smaller, the 100 to 500 is about 3 to 1. 30% success, 35% success rate with the big stuff. And then, with small stuff, and then the big stuff, we're down about 10 to 15%. So it gives us a little bit a better idea on what we're focusing on and how to build a plan out. We do have some groups that are booked above 3,000 blocked room nights. They're outside of our perspective. It's not that we're not going to take the business. That's not the point there. We're just trying to focus on things we know we can do really well. One thing I wanted to point out with the team, we noticed over the last couple of years that the success rate's starting to pick up, and that's what the second to the bottom point is. down there that you can see. Over the long period of time, we've been doing 10% success rate and small stuff and 30% success rate on the small stuff and 10% success rate on the big stuff. But over the short term, we're really getting our arms around this and we're being able to do a much better job. So our success, hopefully we can continue to leverage that and grow because, as Mr. Carasali has pointed out, he'd like to take care of those negatives. And as we know, on the bigger bookings, on the bigger rooms, it takes 24 to 27 months on the average from the time we get the lead till we get ahead in a bed. So it takes a long time to get the cash to flow.
I
Yes,
have
sir.
a question. What's the success rate with the projected room nights on an annual basis?
Well, on the overall, we didn't look at it like that. We've looked at
Well,
the small
let me give you a little bit of information so maybe you can look into this. We've projected for the year to book 238,000 room nights, the convention, fiscal 15, 16.
Yeah.
So through February, we booked 116, 116. That's 7 months. March, we booked 5,000. So that means in order to meet the 238,000 projection, we have to book 30,000 room nights a month for the next 4 months. So it doesn't really look like a valid projection. Have the projections been valid? Is this just an anomaly? Or do we have to tighten up how we project and be held more accountable, have better benchmarks? Just question for you again to look at.
So to your point, where the information comes from is from what we
No, I'm
think of-
getting that information from their information. What I'm telling you right here.
Yeah, okay, so that if the
That was on these last reports that came out. Internal reports.
So this is an example of making sure we're clear about the definitions we're using of booked versus consumed. So the analysis that Howard just provided you was based on consumed within the year and a look back on win-loss ratios as it relates to how the budget's looking for FY 15-16.
I can't speak.
John?
No, I'm sorry, I'm just asking a question. If we've been projecting for years large numbers of projection for booking room nights, and we've either met them or we haven't, this appears to be a number that we're not going to meet because there's no way in heck we're going to book, the RSCVA is going to book 30,000 room nights for each month for the next 4 months. Should we look into that and tighten up projections in general? That's all.
Mr. Olson, this study was not about what the staff says and what staff is doing on that. I totally disagree with what you said, that we are doing a good job here and we are working. Totally, 100% disagree with you. This study was done and the strategic plan is being done so we can compare ourselves to the best of its class for a destination and find out what the numbers should be, not what the staff tells you. I do not do a study from outside to decide whether my staff is telling me we are doing a good job or not. I bring an expert from outside to look at our business and tell me where the potential is and where the opportunities are and where we are not hitting the target. And as far as I'm concerned, we are not hitting the target by long shot. So already I think we are going in a wrong direction because we had asked from day one that the study that is going to be done by John Katz is going to compare this destination with its peer group, with those who run a great operation, great convention and tourism operation, and compare to those operations and the potential of this market where we should be.
So the question I would have then is we're going to compare to what, where would we get the numbers other than what's been reported by all your hotels and what's been generated by their CRM system in the booking, I don't know where else we're going to get base numbers.
Saying where the number we're going to get, obviously you're absolutely right. That's where we're going to get. I'm talking about we did a study to see where we should be in the next 5 years. What is the potential of this market? Not that we are doing well, because again, I want to emphasize, I feel we have a lot of improvements to be done. And that is what I like to see.
So just to be clear, Howard is not, what he provided you is a perspective of performance. So the performance is heading in a specific direction, and there's a certain part of the business that's performing better than other parts of the business. How it's performing against other CVBs, John Kotz is looking into that for us. We specifically asked him to go get win-loss ratios of other CVBs, which he did not have because that wasn't actually part of his scope, but he's going to go do that. So we're working on this. This is just purely what's performing over the past 5 years, what's closing, where are we successful, and why. That was a huge question that the board asked, and we have the historical analysis on that. Howard did it as a third party. We didn't ask for John's perspective. We didn't ask for the sales staff perspective. The data is there, and it's really actually pretty clear, and it's actually pretty insightful, quite frankly. So that's just within its own, within the own analysis of the RSCVA.
So just say one more.
Ms. Farahi.
We are not comparing to how we have done in the last 5 years. That was not this strategic plan that was going to be done, and the study that was going to be done was not based on what we have done in the last 5 years. The study that we are doing is to show the potential of this market and where this market should be first, and how long it should take us to get to where, compared to its peers that do a great job, how long it should take us to get there, and what we need to do, what expenditures, capital-wise and marketing-wise, we need to do to get there. Okay. So if, for example, and I'm not trying to pick on our team, if an organization has done a mediocre job in the last 5 years, and to say now we are doing a little bit better, to me is meaningless. Because you're assuming a wrong assumption, a wrong decision and conclusion. I want to compare ourselves to the best of our class and then say, this is where we should be and this is what's going to take. And that was John Cott's clear direction from day one. That's why I said we need to hear John Kotz first, make sure he has put those metrics in place so we can compare our organization with those metrics.
Thank you, Mr. Fry.
Just one.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
Just to reply, the information that's available from CVBs is on a roll-up basis. We'll get an average number. We are looking at individual areas that we can work well within or one we can't, and that's where we're getting our perspective. I don't know that we're going to be able to get any kind of perspective down into these market realms. We'll get a CVB number, yes. But another point too, I realize we have to go forward, but if we're going forward, we have to know where we are today. We have to know where we're starting from, and that's what we're trying to get together. And to get a sense of what we have to know where we are so we can launch forward. So that's the reason I'm bringing this up.
Thank you, Mr. Olson. Before we continue, the idea of today's was just to get an update and to provide information based upon the update. We still have yet to get through the entire update. So can we please get through the update and then make comments based upon that? Because and Mr. Farahi, your comments are valid, and Mr. Carasali's are valid as well, but I want to make sure that we stay on focus here because we're delaying the inevitable of us getting through this. So please, Mrs. Olson, if you could complete your report.
Yeah, I can certainly try.
Thank you.
So this is a perspective based on conventions and groups of the analysis of all the market segments, the opportunities from a bottom-up build, and how it rolls up as discussed. So you can see it grouped into 3 strategies. I spoke about that before. And you can also see the resource requirements that have been identified to grow new growth and or innovative growth. So if you want to know where this information came from, how do we come up with a room night forecast, it's all in the detail from page 56 and below. And you'll see a year-by-year build-out of the opportunities, what they are, what the resources are to make them come to fruition, and where the room nights are coming from. Net on the whole thing is based on the opportunity landscape that we see, and what our current strengths are and competitive advantages are. We see growing the convention business about 6%, give or take. That moves the business from about 500,000 room nights over the past 5 years to about 700,000 over the next 5. Again, directionally correct. So what's really powerful about this, if we could get our arms around it, is there is a detailed look at each segment and each opportunity and where we think we can get the revenue from. And there's like 50 pages of it, quite frankly, in order to get this kind of summary and this kind of perspective. Now, what we need to understand from the board at some point is when all of this comes together, if directionally, if we're satisfied with this, okay? So this is provided for each of the lines of business as I discussed before as well.
Thank you.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, again, it's not for us to decide whether we are satisfied with it or not. The study that has been done by John Cutts has to indicate to us where, because if not the board, I may say 700,000, not say 900,000, you may say $1.2 million. That's not our job to decide. That is, the study should indicate to us where we should be year 1, year 2, year 3, 4, and 5.
Absolutely, I absolutely agree. So Mrs. Olson.
So I'm not sure if the board wants to look at this or not, but there's also what was delivered today is analysis of the convention center. We do not need to get into the detail on it. It's the same as the other facility analysis that were provided.
Thank you, Mrs. Olson. At this time, I'm going to bring it back to the board for further discussion, but I think we've had enough discussion. I mean, I'd like to see if there's any other discussion that needs to be added at this time, but I've sensed the kind of direction of the board is that we'd like to see Mr. Cotts come back in the next 30 days to present his presentation to us, but at the same time, have Mrs. Olson and On Strategy continue on with their work because we don't seem to have a problem with specifically the process that On Strategy has brought forward, but we just want to have some clarification to where the data is and make sure that the data that we're being provided, not only to the board but to On Strategy, is succinct with what we have in mind. Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Chair, no, we need more than that. This study is mostly about what has happened in the last 5 years and the data on that, which is we need it, absolutely. But more importantly in a strategic plan is the next 5 years where we should be and where we should be putting our resources on that. That's where I like to see, based on the study of John Cutts, where are the opportunities and where should we be every year from then on? So when we are done, the team here and the board has a clear direction. These are the opportunities. This is where we should put our resources based on the study that is done. And year 1, the staff, this is your marching orders. Year 2 is, this is what I'm looking for.
I agree. And I urge you to read through this draft that we've been provided today. And like I said, there are observations in there that show direction to where we should be going in the future and what that should look like and where we should vest and divest from. And so I urge every board member to please go through this draft, vet this draft as much as possible. And if there's data in here that you do not agree with, let's take a look at this and say, there's not any opportunity that's presented to us for specific business going forward into the next 5 years. Where is that specific business and how do we get that from John Cotts or whoever?
Well, like the 6% you have put in the convention growth, where did we come up with the 6%? Why not 10%? Why not 20%?
That's what I was trying to explain. is that we did a bottom-up opportunity analysis, which we could get into if you would like to, of exactly every single opportunity, where we currently stand in the marketplace, what the booked business looks like, and what the forecast is based on the market growth, and we built that all the way up, and it happens to be 6%.
Well, that is, to me, I'm sorry, that's a wrong assumption. That's
Okay.
totally wrong. I'm not looking from bottom up.
Okay.
I'm looking at the facilities we have, the sizes we have, where we should be based again on the potential of this market. If, for example, I'm going to give you an example. If we should have had 10 salespeople in the last 5 years, competent salespeople, and we only had 5, and the production of that team was such that your data today shows that the potential of what we can increase is only 6%, well, we started with the wrong assumption, wrong conclusion. Maybe we need to look at where the potential is, then we have to look at what resources we need to have to get to that potential.
Mr. Farahi, we're saying the same thing, actually. So I think you'll be pleasantly surprised with what you see in here. It does not take it to the place of a roadmap, and it does not take it to a place of an ROI yet, because we're not done. But it does not start from a limited view of only these facilities and only these resources. It starts from the other perspective, which is, what does the market opportunity look like? Where can we grow? What do we have to grow with, and what do we need?
Who gave you those opportunities? Where did you get
From
the
the
information?
COTS report.
Okay, that's where Mr. Cox exactly has to come and indicate, show us so we can agree with his study, so when you base your study on that, so we know it is correct.
So there's also the other point that's related to that, which is we happen to be in these lines of business. So we need to start with sort of the base of what we have, which is what he did too, by the way, as well as the market analysis that's already been done based on the databases we have to work with that are the third-party databases of the convention's business. So we're not making that up. There are like 30 defined market segments, and that's what they are.
I think I want to bring this back really quick. I think we're getting off track here, and we're vetting this process here at the board, and that's not the intent. Today is to just get a brief overview, have the board members take this out. So at this point, I'd like to close discussion and open this up for a motion to move forward. Mr. Lawson.
I'd like to make a motion that On Strategy continues with the work that they're doing, and that we require Mr. Cox to be here within the next 30 days, or at our next board meeting probably, I guess.
All right.
Unless we don't need another special board meeting, I hope.
No. I have that in the I have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed? Seeing none, passes unanimously.
Mr. Chairman, when we have that, Mr. Cox will be making presentation. Is it going to be a special, is it coming before the committee, strategic committee meeting, committee, or is he coming for this board? And are we gonna have the time to really get the report first, study it, be ready before he comes in? Because to give a report when you haven't had time,
Yeah.
so I wanna urge that we get the report and have a special meeting so we can really just deal with this issue.
Mr. Fry, thank you. We'll take your comments into suggestion. I think we will should have that report ahead of time. At this point, the strategic plan committee only consists of you at this point. There is no other members that currently started that are still with this board. So I would give the direction that presentation be given to the entire board at that time by Mr. Kotz, and I would suggest that happen at the next board meeting. That would be my suggestion, and that we get that report ahead of time. So, seeing that, we've got moving on to the next presentations by Reno-Sparks Convention Visitors Authority staff.
Excuse me, by when are we gonna have that report? Are you gonna ask a date so we have time to analyze it?
Mrs. Cunningham, do you have an understanding when we might have that report?
I think it's reasonable to have it in your hands 2 weeks before the board meeting. Is that comfortable?
Okay, that would be great. Thank you.
A week is fine.
All right. So presentations by the staff.
Okay,
Ms. Cunningham.
we'll try to be brief. I was going to start out by saying there's no better time than right now to do kind of a turnaround with how we're operating. And I do feel that on strategy and John Cotz's work will get us to get our arms around a strategic plan with key performance indicators and a direction that the board and staff are all on the same page with. In an effort, we're making one little change from our executive staff in an effort to be 100% here at our board meetings and pay attention to the direction the board gives us. You'll notice that no one will be checking their cell phones during our board meetings anymore. I have gotten feedback from some of our board members. I want to assure you that going forward, any reports that we present will be completely vetted from our Director of Finance, and I'll be reviewing them before they go in the packets to ensure their veracity and accuracy. We want to definitely continue this environment of full transparency. There was a question regarding a policy, setting a policy for vetting when, for when do we bring something to the board for approval, and I'll just call it out. Big Sky is sort of what precipitated that. I'd like to, we do have that. I'm sorry that it was not followed prior to my stepping into this spot, but it's called, it's at your place setting resolution. It was adopted in 2012. I just quickly, this is for your information so you can see that we are all on the same page. Normally, something like that would have come to the board. It falls under the events requiring site fees or other charges not previously approved by the board through the budget process. And so 50,000 is the threshold for that. While I'm sitting in the seat, I will be more conservative with that 50,000, and as some different opportunities come up, I'll be sure to bring them to the board for discussion. So be sure to take a look at this. Another one that we're going to be exploring is the Barracuda Golf Championship, an opportunity with that, and that actually falls under number 4, just a grant. And there's no pricing on that. It's just an opportunity that I will be bringing before the board for your involvement, discussion, and decision. What we don't want is the board to be asking about, having questions about what's happened or what's going on. We want you guys to be definitely on the page with it. Another thing that I've started delving into is this document called Board Governance. And I think at some point down the road, it really would behoove our board to do a retreat and talk about board governance, a 2-hour session with an expert. Anyway, though, in the interest of kind of a friendly reminder to all of our board members, I've met with Ben Kennedy as well as another attorney focusing that really specializes in governmental board governance. Anyhow, just please read this on your own at your time, and I think it's important to keep in mind we have to be cognizant of our open meeting laws all the time. Page 2 is just some direction I'd like to request the board be aware of regarding sharing information with board members. As you know, now going forward when I'm asked, I've requested that the board members come to me for any of their asks regarding information from the RSCVA and our data that we have. We'll be sharing it with all of the board members when it comes forward. And then staff interaction with board members, it's important to keep in mind that you're welcome to interact with the board. Oh, excuse me, go ahead.
Mr. Lawson.
Or Mrs. Lawson.
Mrs. Lawson.
She has the power at my house. Along those lines, yes, we know that, huh? Along those lines, I'm going to propose, and I don't know if this is the right place to do it, but we have a 2-hour rule. We have kind of a 2-hour rule in different forms of government that if one board member asks staff for a report or anything that's going to take over 2 hours, that should come back to board to the board to see if that's feasible. Because if I assign a 4-hour project and everyone else does the same thing, now the staff is not doing their job. And I think keeping focus and moving in the same direction is important. So as part of that, I'd like to just see us a 2-hour rule that is a policy. If staff says it's going to take longer than 2 hours to do this research, they're not. It's incumbent on them to say it's going to take longer than 2 hours. We need to go back to the board with it.
And I think we should agendize that, to discuss that at the next meeting in regards to, so we're going to bring that back at the end of the meeting to make sure that that's put into by member comments.
Great,
direction.
it's a policy. We'll
Thank
do
you.
that. There's been discussion about confidentiality, and that's this form. We are, by direction of the NRS statute, all including board members, staff, anyone that is exposed to confidential information that is affiliated with this organization, we are all obligated to keep it confidential. If there is a request to disclose any information, it does need to go in front of the board. So I just want you to be aware that that document exists, and staff is well aware of it. Moving on quickly to marketing, just an update. We had great presentation by 4 of the integrated marketing firms. The marketing committee narrowed it down to 2, and they will be back on April 22nd, which happens to be the same day that we have John Kotz doing his presentation. The day before. They're coming back on April 22nd for a special 2.5-hour meeting to present, and the board will ultimately select one of the 2 firms, and we'll move forward with that project. National Championship air races. I'd like to show, good, they're going to show you. I just wanted to remind everybody this Sunday at 12 noon is airing for the National Championship air races on NBC Sports, and we do have 4 commercials on that, and Chad will show. This is 1 minute. Yeah, this is our commercial.
For those who pledge allegiance to life, liberty, and the endless pursuit of a damn good time, we have one suggestion. Find your passion in Reno-Tahoe, USA. All seasons, 1,000 reasons. Visit renotahoe.com.
And we have another quick spot I'm going to show you. It's a minute long, which NBC Sports has been broadcasting for the last 45 days, promoting their coverage of the air races.
Reno-Tahoe, USA presents.
Jet, check in. 17, 55, 33, 61, 6. Race control, bronze jet, ready for departure.
Gentlemen, start your engines.
Hold your lines, gentlemen. Looking good. Bring it forward. Bring it forward. Gentlemen, you have a race.
Here's your race right here. Can he get him on the wall? He's got him.
Oh,
you talk about slingshot out of turn 9. Wow.
Moving out on the line. Looking good. Here comes the speed. Pushing it up. Gentlemen, you got a race.
Valley of speed, folks. Here we come. Your unlimited gold racers. Rare Bear, Strega, and Voodoo. Race 77, Rare Bear.
Get there, guys. Speed down. 300. We're at 300 knots. Here comes that vampire jet. 3 fuselage back. 3 buttons. Really nice. Stay there, 8. Don't get too far ahead. Great day for air racing. Guys, you're looking good. Speed 308.
Don't miss the National Championship Air Races, presented by Reno-Tahoe, USA, March 27th, 3 p.m. Eastern Time on NBC Sports.
Thank you, Chad. So this gives us incredible national exposure for a fraction of what it would cost for us to get TV time. And TV time is something that I'd really like to work into our campaign, but typically it's hundreds of thousands of dollars. But this does get us out there just a little bit. Last of all, two other things. Acknowledging our marketing staff. They got the top award at the Addies for photo shoot that they were all involved with and really did hands-on with the entire process. So good for them. And last of all, right after this meeting, we'll be shooting out a press release. Fiscal year to date, our room tax revenues are up 17%, double digits. Cash occupied, and I know Brian will touch on this, but cash occupied rooms up 9.2%. And our ADR, the hoteliers are doing an amazing job, up 7.3%. Right now it's at $94.95 average. If we can hang on to that, it will be the best in the history of this organization. So that's exciting news. Okay, sales.
We're working fast and furiously on a DC sales mission that'll be the week of April 4th. Our advanced RSVP process for our customers is really very encouraging. We have 4 hotel partners that'll be joining us. As we sit this morning, we have 53 customers that'll be participating in a series of 4 different events on that Tuesday through Thursday. I'm very excited by some of the representation. American Chemical Society, that kind of goes back to that STEM focus. Will be participating with us, the National Association of Health Services Executives. We have the National Guard, a variety of different organizations that are going to spend some time learning about our destination, and hopefully will turn this into leads, which then will hopefully turn into book business. Very exciting and a great turnaround from our event last year. So stay tuned. We'll keep you posted. It's going to be a great week.
Facilities.
I have a question for Mr. Leinen. So based on the February report, as I was asking Mrs. Olson, we're at 116,000 booked rooms with 238,000 projected. So where would you see us ending up now in the end of the fiscal year as far as booked room nights?
Yeah, we're looking at that and looking at that very closely and monitoring it. I'm not giving up. I think we got a lucky shot at getting there. Where we stand is this. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 or 5 of my managers will make their goals. I have an open position. I don't think I have enough gas in the tank to overcompensate this position that's been open. And then I also have a manager who is in a ramp-up time and is building that market. So, long story short, we've got a shot at making it. Probably going to be somewhere around that 85 to 90% of our goals.
You feel by the end of June, right?
Yeah, yeah.
So
our goals really ramp up.
90% would be about 210,000 roughly.
Yeah.
So that's an increase. Roughly, you're probably going to do 20 plus 25,000 room nights a month for the last 4 months, roughly.
Yeah, the way we set our goals, we ramped them up, and because we find that our production really kicks in the last quarter. So this is when it's the make or break time.
Well, we're pretty close. We'll find out pretty soon.
Yeah.
Thank you, John.
But to that point, I wanted to point out, year to date, we're up 8% over where we were same time last year. And right now we're running, in terms of new production, roughly 44% of our production right now is new, which is encouraging. I'd like to see that a little bit higher, but it's in a positive direction.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali. Mr. Kelly.
Thank you. We're right in the beginning stages of the United States Bowling Congress Open Championships out at the stadium, which is moving along nicely. Working with Brian's department on our capital expenditure implementation, primarily at the convention center. We have internet improvements, parking lot, roof bids, an RFQ we're developing for a designer for our convention center interior projects, as well as the livestock event center improvements. And we're pleasantly surprised with our concert activity. We'll be putting Skrillex. We've got Florida Georgia Line on sale well, the pre-sales today goes on sale tomorrow. We anticipate it going clean tomorrow. Tomorrow morning, Skrillex going on sale with a Burning Man art fundraiser on Memorial Day weekend. Anticipate Alabama Martina McBride confirming at the 1st of September. The Asian concert, I apologize, it's actually going to be July 3rd, and quite a bit of activity on a daily basis.
Great.
So,
Mr. Carasali.
Mr. Kelly, I think we talked the other afternoon with Mrs. Olson when she was there in the office. And I asked you a question about the budget for fiscal 16-17, which is a dark year, my understanding, correct? Bowling?
yes, sir.
So the negative departmental profit for 2015-16 with the bowlers is $1,430,000 negative, roughly, right? And for 17, it's $1,634,000. It's $1,635,000, which is an increase of $206,000 with a dark year with no bowlers. So how could it go up $200,000 when there's nobody there, hypothetically?
Well, we're not generating the lineage. And we, you know, you have to have a certain amount of staff to maintain the facility.
I understand how the revenue side is. I'm asking you about the side where we're spending the same amount of money or more on expenses than we were with the year when we had all the bowlers. And that's just not true in the National Bowling Stadium. It's true throughout some of the other facilities. So I think maybe you'd better relook at projecting fiscal 16-17 in general as far as the facilities are concerned, because I believe there's some money there to be saved. That's my only question and thought. A little food for thought.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali. Mr. Mavrides.
I'm going to apologize for going back for a second. I had a question for Mr. Linen on tourism sales. Looking at our goals versus on leads versus actual production, can you comment on that? I just need to get up to speed a little bit on what's going on here. Thank you.
Sure. Several things. When we set our lead goals, they're based on contacts that we made at trade shows and when those convert into leads back to the hotels. We've just gone through a whole round of series of different trade show events, and so we're in arrears and getting the leads submitted. So we got to get caught up on that lead transaction. So we're behind pace in terms of getting those into our system. The other thing that we struggle with is setting what is a lead. Some of it is RFI, and some of it is, here's a tourism lead, and this is a group ready to book. And in the past, there have been more, maybe a tendency to put in requests for information as lead information. But right now, we're backed up and trying to get these leads in due to travel schedules.
Is that translating to, it looks like on your schedule here that we're seeing a decrease in that line of business by segment, some are up, some are down, but overall it's down from prior years. Is that translating into a decrease?
I don't believe it is. Those numbers that you're looking at are hotel reported numbers, and we've struggled with trying to ensure that what is reported by the hotels has validity to what we report, but because they're not our numbers, we can't verify that. And what we're running into is an interpretation of what those numbers are as the hotels report them. I don't think there's a direct correlation. I actually think the reports that are coming in are under-reporting what you guys are doing because your market is up. And it wouldn't make sense that the tourism market is going down while you guys are going up.
That's my confusion.
Well, mine too. It's a challenge, and when we get into the strategic plan for the tourism thing, that coding and that accountability for room night metrics on tourism is very, very difficult to manage.
Back to the budget.
1 second, Ms.
Back to the budget, we did have to pull things together to get it out to the board, and we're still looking at payroll. So it's still something under scrutiny.
Thank you, Mrs. Cunningham. Mr. Farahi.
I think the question again, I didn't hear back, Joe, from you. When any facility is dark, how can we reduce our expenses in those facilities? Again, that is where management comes in play. Anybody can run a facility and have a bunch of people. Have we looked truly through every facility and find out when it's not in use, how we can share resources among the facilities to bring our expenses down?
Yes, sir, we have. We do, and we do share. If you look at the size of our facilities and our staffing levels, we share between facility service workers, as an example, between all of our buildings. The majority, lion's share of our facility service workers' custodial work is done by temporary labor from a labor source. And I think as we move on with the process, we'll see, as Ms. Olson pointed out earlier, our facility operating deficits are at or below comparable size markets. And we do share, and we do operate efficiently. And to Mr. Carasali's point earlier, yes, our operating deficit does increase at the stadium, but our expenses did not increase. Our expenses went down 30% or 29%, but it doesn't go down dollar for dollar. And I think as we move throughout the strategic planning process, we'll demonstrate that we are operating efficiently and that our operating deficits, as I mentioned, of course, you don't have a comparable bowling stadium, but at the Livestock Event Center, and Convention Center, we operate, our operating deficit is in the middle or below comparable size facilities and comparable size markets. And we do strive to be efficient. It's not our goal to lose as much as we can. We do move people, and our staffing levels are extremely low, we think.
Thank you, Mr. Kelly. Thank you, Mr. Farahi. If that's it, Mr. Rivers.
On the finance side, we are working through the budget, which you'll see here in a couple items. To Joe's point, we're going to be working with his staff to put out bids for the items that were approved last month from the surplus. And then there's a note on here for Wild Creek Golf, but I'm actually going to ask Mr. Kennedy to give a brief update as he's been handling that through the request to Washoe County.
Sure. So to date, I've had several conversations with Paul Liparelli, the county's attorney, and we're still just working through issues. Paul's trying to get his hands around title issues and just kind of the physical makeup of the course and the land. And so we're moving forward, having discussions.
Thank you. Ms. Smear.
Just really quickly, and not to divert back, but if there's programming going on at the bowling stadium, who's in charge of that? Is that you, Joe, or is that John?
For the most part, that would be me.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
Thank you. All right. Seeing no other further discussion, I think, does that complete your report for this at this time, Mrs. Cunningham?
I just want to address the Big Sky tournament recap. John?
Mr. Farahi, yes.
On this budget, Jennifer, for next year, how are we using John Cott's report to decide, for example, how many salespeople do we need to reach those goals that are going to be set for year 1 through 5? Are you relying on that study to decide what the budget should be, how many people we need to hire?
We have referred back to it and addressed it also with Olson and on strategy in terms of how many we need and then building the budget from that. So the budget may change slightly as we get a little bit further down the path.
If I might respond to that, Mr.
Yeah,
Farahi, essentially what we're trying to do at this point is maintain the status quo, and then once the strategic plan is completed in June, July, we would come back and amend the budget to put in those decisions that are decided to be the most beneficial, highest ROI into the budget and make those changes at that point.
So then the answer is we are not looking at that study while we are doing this budget. We're going to wait till the study is finished before we decide?
At this point, that is the direction, correct.
Mr. Chair, I want to recommend time is of the essence. We should not be waiting. We have the resources in the bank, at least on the sales side.
Mr. Fry, we can't discuss this under this item because it's not agendized. We'd have to come back to this. I apologize, but we can talk about that in the preliminary budget in just a minute, if that's okay with you.
We can talk about it
in another item.
Okay.
Just if you could hold, please. Thank you. Okay. Big Sky, we were just provided with this, everybody was provided with this document this morning. I think it's probably a good decision for us to hold off on any kind of update on this and give us time to update, and then put this on the next board member, the next meeting, next month's meeting, if that would be amenable with you guys.
No problem there. I apologize for just getting it to you today, but getting these numbers wrapped up and turned around as fast as we could required us to take all this time to pull it together. So if we want to table this for next month, that's fine. Because it's not finalized anyway. We have not had the chance to do our due diligence with Big Sky. They're all wrapped up in the whole NCAA basketball tourney right now.
All right. I'd like to table this issue until next month to discuss this, and so that every board member has time to go through this data, because this is the first time I'm looking at it today, so it's difficult for me. So we'll table that till next month. All right. Mr. Lawson.
And just for future, John, it's not, and this is not a criticism, so please don't take it that way, but in Sparks, if I'm handed a 58-page document at the beginning of a meeting, I don't consider it. I need time to digest it before I can make a decision on it. And like I said, I understand what you're trying to accomplish, but it's not fair to the board to drop I don't know how many pages it is, but it's probably 50 or 60 and at the time of the meeting. So we want to have it a little bit earlier, because I know a lot of us do our due diligence and read the board packet. And by the way, thank you for cutting it from 200 and something down to 103 this last go-round. That was a much nicer board packet to read. But I just for future, that's how I make my decisions, so I won't consider if something's dropped on me at the meeting.
Fair enough. When you do review this, just so you know, the PR releases, you can really just scan over. That's highlighted in the cover memo. You don't really need to digest the rest of the advertising unless you care to.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Lyon. And Mrs. Cunningham, is that it for the Mr. Carasali?
Mr. Rivers, back to the bowling stadium for a minute. So we cut, revenue was down about a little over 70%, and labor was down 29%. So just maybe you can take a look at that to see if we can lower.
Yeah, and we have planned to discuss all of that as part of the budget presentation here in just a moment.
Sure, it would be nice to hear back that maybe instead of cutting 30%, you could be able to cut 60% or something. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali. All right, moving on to the marketing and sales division, Barracuda Championship TV on the Golf Channel.
Perfect. We have an opportunity. I was just mentioning about TV time, and Chris Hoff, Executive Director of the Barracuda Championship, approached staff earlier in March with a really desirable opportunity to get some TV time on the Golf Channel, again, to expose Reno Tahoe and position us with a very high caliber, good profile event in terms of branding. It's one of the best that we could be associating with and trying to get our name on a national level. The ask, it's a $75,000 package. As you recall, we did award them $36,500 in the special events funding. This opportunity really has just come up, and the amount that we awarded them is for marketing. So it would be very natural to flow that in, should the board approve the additional $38,500 to buy the TV package sponsorship. Staff is completely in support of it. So with that, I'd like to ask the board for discussion.
Mr. Farahi.
I would like to make a motion. I think this is a money well spent to support this effort.
I have a motion.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. 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 All those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. All right. We have convention tourism sales reports and marketing reports that we've kind of covered briefly. Does anybody need a further detail into either one of those items? Can we take those in a block vote right now? All right.
Move to approve items 2 and 3, even though they're labeled 2 and 2, under Marketing and Sales Division.
Doing the other two.
All right, I have a motion. Do I have a second? I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, moving on to Finance Division. RSCVA 2016 reports and operations, transit, lodging statistics. Looking for a motion to approve unless there was further discussion at this time.
Move to approve item 1 under Finance Division.
I have a motion and a second. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. All right, Mr. Rivers, fiscal year 2016 preliminary budget.
Thank you. And just one note, it's not in your packet, but Ms. Cunningham mentioned February was very, very strong. We were up 24% year over year in taxable room revenues. Over $10 in rate, 13.5% in ADR for the market. So things continue to be strong going into 16. With that, what you have before you is the preliminary budget, as was discussed. What the goal is here today, to tie into what On Strategy is doing, is we want the benchmark for what we're going to use for 16, so we can provide that data and then begin to forecast it out, to your point, Mr. Farahi, to get what that's going to look like 5 years from now. So what you've got before you is the status quo, and big picture, things look very positive. Revenues look good. What we've got laid in is we've got the surcharge revenues, which we began getting the current fiscal year. The outlying properties, and this was a question Mr. Mavrides had, the outlying properties did not go up until the middle of August. So we don't have a full fiscal year's collections of the surcharge within the current outlook year that you have before you. That's why you see the significant lift as it relates to the next fiscal year. Why is this not big? There we go. So what you have before you is 6 years of actual results by department or revenue line. You have the original budget that was approved for 15-16, the outlook, which is where we're projecting to end 15-16, as well as our forecast for the 16-17 budget. The outlook number represents 7 months of actual results with 5 months of what we believe will happen over the February to June timeframe to come to a comparable outlook number. That's the number we're comparing against the budget when you get to the far right column, which is the variance. Again, from a highlight perspective, next year we don't have a USBC tournament. That's a significant hit as it relates to occupied rooms. Convention activity is pretty well flat. Do me a favor, hand those out. We have some increased room inventory as it relates to Courtyard downtown. We have included at this point Wild Creek for the entire fiscal year. Obviously, once we get a final determination on that, we can adjust that out as appropriate. The budget includes a 3% merit pool. It also includes, at this point, Mr. Carasali has been asking related to the full-time staffing down at the Bldg Stadium Event Center. Most of those employees that are down there are currently shared. There's a couple that are specific to bowling. There's a couple that are specific to the Reno Event Center. But for the most part, the staff is shared amongst the buildings. Given that, we are proposing at this point reducing 6 full-time positions that are shared across the buildings down there within the budget that's in front of you. And Mr. Carasali, when you asked at the meeting with Erica and Joe for a staffing guide, that's in here as well, the organization chart by facility or department. There's also a debt schedule in there from today through the end of the bonds in 2032. And please interrupt us as we run through it, but that's kind of a high level just to tee up where we're at and what we're going to run through this morning.
Mr. Rivers?
Yes, sir.
So I wasn't just talking about the bowling stadium, but that was just an example. What about all the other facilities? Are you doing the same thing and vetting them and looking at the potential expense reductions available there?
We are, yes.
Is that reflected here, or you're going to continue to do it and revise these?
That is continuing to be done. Okay. At this point, what is reflected is a reduction of 6 full-time employees at the Bldg Stadium Event Center complex downtown. No other full-time staff.
We look for that to be just the beginning in the facility side.
We're always looking to be as efficient as possible.
Thank you.
Would be how I would answer that.
Mr. Farahi. Thank you, Mr. Carasali.
Ms. Cunningham, what we were talking about earlier on was that we should not be waiting to hire people in especially sales, and if we need additional people in the marketing. if you wait till we get the report, go start the fiscal year, July, by the time we hire them in maybe August, September, as we all know, everything takes time. So, Mr. Chair, I want to ask this board to consider, please, to give the authority to our managing director, Ms. Cunningham, to look at the COTS report and decide for organization with all the facilities and the size of the market we have, how many salespeople we should have, how many, where are the opportunities both in sales and marketing, and start hiring those people now. There is no reason to wait.
Is that, would that be in the form of a motion, Mr.
Yes.
Farahi? Wait, hold on 1 second, I apologize. Preliminary budget. Okay. Okay. All right. We can't actually take a motion on that because that is not under this agendized item, but that can be direction that was given to Mrs. Cunningham, and she can take with that in regards to the budget as we move forward and how that will affect our budget.
Duly noted.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Cunningham.
So are we going to get a report by next board meeting based on that study, where our numbers should be and where we need to have the additional personnel?
Could we get that from Mr. Rivers and you in regards to what that potential cost would look like and how that would affect the ongoing budget? Mm-hmm. Okay.
Chairman?
Yes.
I think if we entitle Ms. Cunningham to have more authority in hiring and it's firing, making moves here, or because we may not get a new CEO for 6 months or so, I think she'll put this organization in much better condition than it is today, waiting to receive the new CEO, and at the same time we'll be saving a lot of money, making more money. I just think we should entitle her with the true powers of a CEO, because I think she can get the job done.
Right, Mr. And we can't really discuss that right now. But go ahead, Mr. Kennedy.
So I can address that. I mean, when she was named the directing or the managing director, the board was clear that she had the same job rights, responsibilities as the CEO. So she has a different title, but she already has all those powers.
It means you have no excuses.
We didn't tell her specifically, but as a board, you heard what was being said.
Right.
So,
Mr. Lawson.
Just a couple of comments. And Brian, you're planning on revising the budget after, what's the date we have to file our budget by?
So we have a tentative budget due date of April 15th and a final due date of June 1st with the state.
So we're required to file that budget prior to that time.
Correct.
We won't be anywhere close on our strategic plan, so we won't have any ideas, but we do have the ability to amend the budget later on down the road.
Absolutely. And as I mentioned at a high level, those surcharge dollars, we show them coming through, but we don't show them going out the door until the completion of the plan.
So along those lines then, you're showing a reduction in staff of 5. I don't see that as necessary at this time. It's something that can be done at another time. For the same reasons as Mr. Farahi is saying that we need to ramp up on our marketing, why would we get rid of employees that we may need in a short time? So I'm not sure, and the amount of money that we'd save is, to me, negligible compared to the amount of money that it takes to rehire, retrain, and start them over again.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Lawson. Mr. Farahi.
Mr. Lawson, what I was trying to say, if we can run the operation more cost effectively, we should do that, reduce the staff, and put the monies into sales and marketing and capital expenditures where we would get a return on it. So I think we should not be delaying. If you can run a more efficient operation and reduce the staff, and again, take those monies, put it to more effective use.
Ken, don't we hire by the practices for government employees?
Yes.
That's a higher burden to hire somebody and to fire them also.
Yes.
So there's more to it, and just getting rid of somebody and saying we're gonna save money. I understand that part, but there's another cost because we have to let them go correctly. And then there's all the steps you have to go through to make that happen. And the same thing with when we hire them. We have to go through all the steps of a government employee to hire them too. So those costs to me, if we're gonna lay people off for 6 months or fire them for 6 months, turn around and rehire them again, that, I believe that would outweigh the savings that you're gonna have in the facilities.
We're kind of jumping ahead into the detail, but specifically where those employees were going to be impacted, and not to speak for Mr. Kelly, but we're going from a tremendous run of good bowling tournaments to now a dark year, a ladies year, a dark year, and then an open 3.5 years from now, 4 years from now, I guess, in round numbers. So what he was proposing is taking some of the facility staffing that's in there and reducing that, supplanting with part-time temp labor to fill the voids. And to your point, we do have dollars laid into the budget for separation costs that would come with that in what's in front of you today. So that portion is contemplated, and Joe can speak to this better than I, but I don't know that we would contemplate rehiring them in 6 months because we don't have a USBC tournament coming in 16, 17. We would have the ladies coming back in April of the following year.
Mr. Mavrides.
Will this impact our ability to execute the current U.S. Open tournament?
No, this is contemplated in July post-Open tournament.
All right. Any further direction?
So I just have a quick question.
Mr. Winters.
So the reduction of 6 people is, I don't know how much of this is payroll versus not related. It says 460,000 down. That means we're paying these people like 70,000 a year, fully loaded. There must be something else in that other than it's.
Are you looking specifically at the bowling stadium payroll, or are you looking
Yeah, I'm
at
looking at the bowling stadium.
That's some. Go ahead, but that's part-time.
There's also some part-time and temporary labor and so forth. Most of these folks are on a salary in the 30 to 50 range.
Yeah.
And then with benefits, so no, they're not.
Okay.
They're not fully loaded at 70. There's also temporary labor, part-time labor,
So
casual labor.
there's 6 plus other piece that adds up. to
Correct, yeah, the
460.
variable staff too, I believe the other discussion related to servicing the open tournament is pretty substantial in terms of pin centers,
Yeah, sure.
score monitors and things of that nature that we're required to provide for the tournament.
And I think to address Mr. Mavrides, we do stand, that once these employees recognize that they will be laid off at the end of the tournament, some of them may elect to find other employment, and then we'll have to supplement that with temporary labor, which is not as good, but that's just part of doing our job, so.
Thank you, Mr. Rivers. Mr. Carasali.
Mr. Rivers, I think I said earlier, and I believe this, it's not just the bowling stadium, it's the facilities in general. We should look at the facilities in general and see whether they're being run cost effective. Bowling happens to be a bigger number because you probably have more people there, I don't know. But to me, it's an all-encompassing issue as far as the facilities can very possibly reduce expenses, period, end of report. It's just my opinion.
Thank you, Mr. Carasali.
To that end, we have attempted to add some of the metrics that will flow forward in terms of key performance indicators through on-strategies information to date to these facility P&Ls. So if we jump to page 15 of the budget, the convention center, which we handed out a separate report for the convention center that shows an all-in cost as well, but the fundamentals of what's on here are the same as what was just distributed. But we've added metrics for the full-time staffing. Obviously, the P&L information's on there, but room night attendance, non-room night attendance, room nights generated, putting a metric on all of those for operating costs per room night to try to make it a comparable number that we can look at across buildings. There are some anomalies. The convention center obviously has $9.5 million in debt a year associated with it. So what's handed out today shows that debt less the 2% room tax that was dedicated to it, and then an attempt to assign what John's sales cost is to that to get a all-in cost per room night. So that's what the change was on what was handed out today. But what the goal is here is with the operating cost per room night, the payroll as a percentage of total revenues, and the margin percentage that you called out earlier, Mr. Carasali, is to look at across the 5 facilities that we have today, where are we lagging or doing the best in terms of managing those most efficiently? And if one's $20 and one's $100, what's the reason behind that? And is there anything we can do to influence that number to make it more or less efficient, or produce additional room nights to fuel pulling that number down?
Mr. Lawson.
So, Brian, are you removing the 2% tax?
Yeah, the 2% tax went in.
Before you go on, why?
The 2% tax was put in place to fund the convention center expansion. So if we're assuming, if we were to look at one of Mr. Carasali's, and I think where Mr. Mavrides was asking as well, is if the building were to not exist or get a total cost of it, that would come out. I mean, we can take that off. It's
But,
Tony and I
if
went
you're
back
gonna
and forth on
remove the
that.
2%, you should remove the debt. I mean,
We had a couple
they're
different.
hand in glove, they go together.
Or
If you didn't have the debt, you wouldn't have the debt service.
Correct.
right, so this is, we worked on this. This is just to show an all-in cost, the debt along with the benefit of the 2% to pay the debt. You could look at it at any point and decide.
I get it, I'm just, to me, it doesn't make sense to pull it out. That's
It
a
also
dedicated
includes the
revenue
capital,
source.
and Mr. Mavrides and I spoke about this at length in terms of different options. Should it just be the operating cost plus the direct selling cost associated with it and leave debt and capital off the list? This is just more for discussion than anything, to try to illustrate that there are additional costs associated with the convention center and the other facilities that we're working on that are included, in particular in the bowling stadium, where site fees and most of the selling comes from costs directly assigned to that facility.
And we'll see a similar recap for each
Yes.
facility? Okay,
We are
thank
working
you.
on the other facilities.
Thank you.
So yeah, I mean, that is totally open for discussion. It's something we did last minute. It was just an attempt to try to illustrate the all-in cost of the facility. But that is added to all of the other P&Ls in terms of what the cost per room night is. So what we're projecting for budget for 16-17 is that the convention center operating costs only, just so that it's comparable across, would be $35 per room night produced. The bowling stadium would be $96, the event center would be $22, and the livestock event center would be, my fingers would cooperate, $14.84. And those metrics are back through that entire span as well, but to show directionally, if there's peaks and valleys, particularly the bowling stadium, peaks and valleys with the open tournament versus the ladies versus being dark, what that's produced in terms of room nights, what's that's costing us in raw dollars, and what that's costing us as it relates to room nights, which is that heads and beds quotient.
Mr. Farahi.
It's great to know the cost on that, which is obviously we need to know, and we need to run efficient operations. But really the key is filling these facilities, utilizing. That's why we are doing this study, every one of them. Find out where there are potential ways, the opportunities to fill these facilities. So I want to again urge the board to keep looking at where are we going to bring, is a rising tide. The better this community does, every property does better, there's more money is coming to the coffers here, which we can plow back into sales and marketing and improving our product.
Thank you, Mr. Farahi.
It is hard to cut yourself to a profit, to your point.
Ms.
You got to
Schieve.
have the revenue to support.
I just have to say, I mean, it's one of these things, obviously, this is a little bit about what we're talking about, but at the same time, let me tell you something. Bowling is so popular. It is incredibly popular. We need to look at that stadium instead of a noose around our neck as something that is going to turn profits. I mean, we need to look at programming specifically for that place. And let me just tell you, you could have burner bowls, you could do all the crawls downtown. Kevin had a great idea, having Carrie Underwood throw out the first bowling ball, things of that nature. We're gonna go dark. I think we should have a separate committee that looks at just programming that. And when I talk about separate committee, none of us, I'm talking about the promoters from the crawls, from Burning Man, those people to get in there and have that place busy all the time. And that's what should be happening in there. We have a crown jewel that really no one even knows about. The public hasn't even been allowed into the place. And bowling is off the charts. What about for Hot August nights? I mean, that's like your perfect demographic for bowling. So we need to kind of start to have the mentality of, hey, let's pick it up here and look at other ways how we can start to make this profitable. Looking at these numbers, we've already like said, we'll be 33% down. And then meanwhile, we have 1.3% up in payroll expenses, or payroll. So I'm just saying that I think moving forward, these are the kinds of things that we should be looking at.
Mr. Carasali.
I agree with what the mayor said and what John said. All I'm talking about, it takes you a lot longer to ramp up your revenues to get out there and fill these facilities. And it could take 2, 3, or 4 years, whatever that number is. So in the meantime, why can't you run your existing facilities more effectively and cost effectively? And you're going to save a few $1 million during the course of that time. While then you get to a point and you hire accordingly as you grow, and then pretty soon you reach nirvana up here. But in the meantime, let's save as much money as we can, put it in advertising and marketing, put it in air service. What about air service?
No,
I
agreed.
Because we have to look at right now.
Mr. Winters?
I don't have anything, sorry.
Sorry.
I
All right.
in the future, but I agree with you. We have to look at right now. You can't run a business that way. No way.
Okay. Mr. Rivers?
We kind of jumped farther into this, but if we can back up a couple steps, just in terms of total facility revenues. Obviously, we've discussed USBC. The convention center's down as well. We had some good groups this year, led by Dynamics, Wizard World, that will not occur in the budget. So we're showing facility revenues down by $1.5 million year over year. Get to the meat of this. As it relates to expense trends, which is page 13 of the report, this is expenses by department or facility. And what I just wanted to highlight here is if you look at this total sales and marketing expenditures back in 9-10, we were at 6.1 million. In the budget year, we're anticipating being at 8.7 million. And that does not include the surcharge dollars that will begin to deploy. So we're starting to see some real lift in what we can program into sales and marketing. To say that it's status quo to the outlook is accurate in large part, but we are definitely above where we were 2-3 years ago. We also have some capital dollars laid in to the tune of $2 million. We have $1.5 million across the street at the convention center and $500,000 forecast for the livestock events center. This margin report on page 14 is a true net departmental cost by facility and department as well. So facilities, the sum of the 5 facilities is a $4.5 million loss. From an operating standpoint, that does not include debt or capital. Sales and marketing is $8.5 million. G&A is going down as a result of strategic planning costs, with that wrapping up. And then we've got capital and debt, followed by room tax and the surcharge. And with that, we'd be happy to answer any questions or go into anything in additional detail. I know we've kind of jumped around a little bit, but.
Yeah, so Brian, on slide 14, when we talk about the cash flow changes year on year, and we say that the convention center is going to be down $462,000, the Bldg stadium is going to be down $205,000, and then percentage change, even though it is a negative to a negative, so it shows 38 and 14. It shows as a positive. It's a positive number, and typically, at least when we do these things, like I wouldn't want to sit here and hold my hands up about a 40% decrease at the.
No, that's backwards. Okay. Sorry about that.
Thanks.
Mr. Lawson.
Brian, I didn't see the exact line item, but the mayor mentioned something, and I happen to agree with her 100% on this, is to increase our budget for special events funding and grant money for that, because I think we have a tremendous potential there. And I would like to see it doubled, but I don't know what the budget is. I thought it was 250,000.
Do you want to speak to that?
Sure.
300?
This year, we went into it, I think it was 300. And I think that discussion is very timely in terms of the surcharge money that we'll be getting.
We're going to save money in facilities. We might as well spend it on special events.
Yeah, I would absolutely love to see that expand.
So can we put that in the budget then, Ryan, I'd like to see it doubled at least.
We would like that in the core budget, or we would like that out of the surcharge dollars once the strategic plan is.
Probably the core budget.
Core budget?
Yeah.
We can look
agree.
to see what we can squeeze in there, certainly.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Any other discussion at this time in regards to the budget? Seeing none, I need a motion to accept the report. I have a motion from Mr. Carasali, second from Mr. Lawson. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, motion carries unanimously. Mr. Kennedy.
Nothing to report on legal counsel report.
Thank you. All right, board member comments. Any suggestions currently for new agenda items moving forward? This would be
This
Mr.
is
Lawson.
the time that I get to say about the policy. I want to see us discuss the 2-hour policy for the reason I mentioned before. I'd also like to look at something we do in Sparks, which I think helps everybody and especially staff, is we have certain policies, fiscal policies and personnel policies that we put in place that the board adjusts, or in our case, the council adjusts every year. Just to give you an example, when I came on the city council in 2010, our ratio of employee cost to budget was 94%. And obviously, that's no way to run a railroad. We put in a policy to lower that to 80% over time. We got there. This year, we put it to 78%, and we got there too. So we don't know exactly the right numbers, but I think it's something for staff. You know, one thing I've heard in facilities is that you should have 1/2 of the value, 1/2 of 1% of the value of the building should be put in for CapEx and repairs each year. So it's something that we haven't done in the past, but I think it makes it a little easier for everybody to budget to, number one, and for us as a group to hold accountable.
All right. Any other suggestions from any other members at this time? Seeing none, I'm going to close that. Public comment. Do we have any public comments? No public comment. Looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Move to adjourn. Second. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you. Jesus Christ.
How long did that meeting take?
It took almost 3 hours.
We're getting better.